All right. So just to sum up, I know there's a lot to sum up from last year, but still, the big idea of this book, and particularly of this first chapter, is that we are living a multi-dimensional life. No one lives a one-dimensional life. In fact, the dimension that we see is really a very small part of the multi-dimensional life that we all live in. There are many things happening around us and in us that our five senses cannot grasp, yet they still exist, and they still also guide us and in many ways mold us. Some of these dimensions relate to the soul, and some of them relate to the worlds that we live in. Now, we here are living in what is called the world of action. In Kabbalah, there are four worlds that are spoken of, that really speak of the four worlds of this world, of this universe that we all live in. This world is called the world of action, and it is the lowest of all worlds. The world above us is called the world of formation, and that's where the angels reside. The world above that is called the world of creation. That's where souls come from. And the world above that is called the world of emanation, Olam HaAtzilut, which is where the souls of the righteous come from. Our souls, I'm sorry. I'm sure there are many righteous among us that do come from the world of emanation. My soul comes from the world of creation, but the souls of those righteous come from that world. And that world is a world also where God resides unreservedly. Now, there is the Kabbalistic idea that we spoke about. I promise you I'll get to Rabbi Steinsaltz's word soon. But there is a big Kabbalistic idea that can help us understand where we fit in the life of these worlds, of these four worlds. And that's the idea of tzimtzum, if you recall. Tzimtzum in Hebrew means contraction. And what it refers to is God having to contract himself so that we can even exist in this world, so that materialism can exist, so that he can give space to that which seems, and only seems, not connected to God, right? And that's why in this world, God is hidden. He's hidden not because he necessarily wants to be hidden, but because he needs to be hidden so that this world can exist altogether. Otherwise, if God was to reside fully and unreservedly, this world will explode. It's almost like the power station versus this light bulb. The power station was to reside here, this whole building would explode. So what needs to happen is the contraction of electricity to this light bulb so that we can see and not explode together with this electricity. Same here with God. That's we can dwell into the, we can delve into this a little more, but that's really the big idea, and it enables this world of action to exist. Why is this world called the world of action? It relates to something else about the worlds altogether. We spoke about, souls residing in specific worlds, but these four worlds are also known for their prevalence of good versus evil. So this world has mostly evil and a little bit of good. And that's why, in order to ensure that good prevails in this world, and that good in many ways is spread so that it eventually becomes the dominant force of this world, we need to act. It's not enough to feel, it's not enough to think, but we have to act. We have to act with mitzvahs, we have to act with good deeds, and that in many ways is what empowers goodness to eventually prevail the evil that is predominant in this world. The world of formation, it's almost a 50-50 exchange of powers. So it's a little bit evil, a little bit good, but 50-50. And that's why you can have bad angels existing in this world. We said angels exist there. Angel of death, for example, is a bad angel. There are angels of destruction that are bad angels. Those angels exist in that world because there's room for evil to exist, because the light of God there is not yet completely expanded. It's less contracted than it is in this world, but it's not completely expanded on the other hand. The world above that is the world of creation, where there's very little bit of evil. It's mainly good. That's where our souls come from. That's where our souls really enjoy heavenly bliss. which, as the Zohar says, is not found in this world. The pleasure that our souls have in heaven is far beyond any type of pleasure that this world has to offer. It's a deeper pleasure that is incomparable, but that's because goodness really exists there in an unreserved way, almost unreserved. Then you have the world of emanation, where again, God has zero reservation, zero hindrance, and therefore there's only good there, there's zero evil, and God's light shines unreservedly. So that's another way to look at those four worlds. But we've been speaking about the world of action. What Rabbi Steinsaltz does in this paragraph, in this chapter, is that it takes each and every world and analyzes it. So now we spoke of the world of action. At least last year, towards the end of last year, we spoke about the world of action. Now we're about to go into the world of formation. But to conclude the big idea of this world, let's read this final paragraph. Let me just give an introduction to that which Rabbi Steinsaltz said about this world beyond that we just spoke about, and that is that this world really has, this world of action has three dimensions that are not necessarily found in the upper worlds, in other three worlds. And these three dimensions are Olam, Shana, Nefesh. This world of physicality. Shana means time, but it really means year, but time. And then Nefesh, which means the external part of our soul that interacts with this world, that feels this world, positively or negatively, for example. So, Olam, Shana, Nefesh. We said that when God gave us the Torah, he wanted the Torah to permeate all of these three dimensions. Physicality, and that's why God's voice, when the Torah was given, didn't have an echo. Even though God gave us the Torah in the mountains, and when you shout towards mountains, your voice bounces back, which is what creates an echo, right? When God gave us the Torah, even though he gave it again in mountains, it didn't bounce back. Why didn't it bounce back? Because God's voice permeated the mountains, permeated this world. He wanted physicality itself to absorb godliness. So that's one dimension. In many ways, our duty in this world is to reveal the godliness within physicality. It's a big idea, but again, I'm going over the concepts now so that we can get to this. The second dimension, time, is really a dimension that only belongs to this world. The upper world is beyond time. They say that, and I'm not going to get into this, but part of the afterlife is that they show you a movie of your life. The court that is there, that judges you, shows you a movie of your life. Now you see it from a divine perspective. And therefore, when you did something bad, it aches you. Because you say to yourself, gosh, I should have known better. Why did I do this? That pain is hell, is what causes such embarrassment and such pain that it's hell. That's what hell is, according to Judaism. But why am I saying this? Because when God shows you a movie of your life, if you lived 120 years, it's not like you're going to have to sit there for 120 years and see the movie of your life. The heaven is above time. So they say it's like, flipping cards and seeing all of the content of those cards like this, flipping this book. It's above time. So you don't have to sit there for 120 years. You can sit there for even just a short moment and you'll see your entire life. So it's just above time. Time, again, is a concept that only relates to this world. Then you have a third dimension, which is the way the soul is affected by this world. And that's the part of the soul that's called nefesh. And I'm trying to speak about all these concepts that we spoke about and condense it into just a few minutes. But just to give some clarity, so when we speak of the soul, and this is true not just for this, but for all times in which we'll speak of the soul, let's remember that the soul has 5 levels to it. That's why if you go into many Hasidic synagogues, many synagogues that, maybe we should do this here, really. We don't do it here, maybe we should. But many Hasidic synagogues where the cantor stands, there are 5 candles. Sometimes you'll see a menorah of 5 branches. And that's because when we pray, we are supposed to pray with the entirety of our soul. Now the soul has 5 levels. So to pray with the entirety of our souls means that we have to pray with all 5 levels, and those 5 candles are there to remind us of that. Now, The lowest level of the soul is called nefesh, which is the part of the soul that, again, is most activated in this world. In upper worlds, the nefesh is not activated because it doesn't need to be, because it doesn't deal with this world. It doesn't deal with materialism, with physicality. It doesn't deal with challenges that are limited to this world. It doesn't deal with I'm thinking of a terrible story, but still, it's a story about Rabbi Yitzchak Vorke, who was a great Hasidic master, just to share with you what nefesh is and what nefesh is not. But when Rabbi Yitzchak Vorke passed away, sorry, when Rabbi Yitzchak Vorke's best friend passed away, he told his son, look, I'm sure that your father is going to come and visit you in a dream. Now, as you know, I was very close to your father. Rabbi Nachum of Chernobyl was his name. So when he comes to you in a dream, please just take this letter and give it to him in the dream so that he knows what I feel. Rabbi Nachum of Chernobyl did appear to his son in a dream. And his son says, hey, a few days ago, your best friend, Yitzchak Vorke, came to me. I have a letter for you. And in the dream, his father opens the letter of his best friend. And he sees, please pray for your son and for other things. And Rabbi Nachum of Chernobyl tells his son in the dream, I understand everything that he's saying, that my best friend is saying here, but I have to ask you, what is a son? Now, of course, he was speaking to his son. He appeared to his son. But the term son only applies to this world. So we have a biological family with the son. But again, remember, biology, physicality are only dimensions that belong to this world. I have a soulful relationship with you, son, but I don't call it son. It's not. That's the nefesh language. It's not the neshama language. So in this world, we only really interact with this world with the nefesh. So the three dimensions that we were speaking about here of olam, shana, nefesh, again, physicality or this world, materialism, time, and the nefesh are the three modes with which we interact with this world that come into play in this world of action. When it's important to remember this, because now we're traveling. Remember, I hope you took your passports with you. We're traveling to the upper world, to the world of formation. And there, the language is completely different. The dimensions are completely different. So these three dimensions only really relate to this world. But before we go to the world, yes, please. That's a good question of the soul. Nefesh is the lowest. After nefesh is ruach, which really means spirit. Now, it's a good question if you ask, what does it mean? What is spirit? What is ruach? Ruach means wind. I would use wind or spirit, right? Ruach, wind. But it's the part of ourselves that feels sometimes spiritually awakened. But if we don't do anything about it, it just fades away, it dissipates. Rabbi Steinsaltz actually used this example here in this book, if you recall, the example of false pregnancies. Remember that? Last year? False pregnancies. Like some woman, you tell me, I'm the only man here in the room, but some woman can experience false pregnancies in which they have all the symptoms of a pregnancy, but it's false, just hot air. Same year, some people can experience all sorts of spiritual feeling, but it's hot air if they don't do anything about it. You can go to the Western Wall and feel all elevated, but if you don't do anything about it, it's just ruach. It doesn't mean much. And Yom Kippur is coming up. You can have all sorts of elevated feelings on Yom Kippur, but if you don't do anything about it, again, it's just ruach. It's nothing. And therefore, ruach is not a level that is emphasized really in Kabbalah too much, because it only depends if ruach can turn into action, can be translated to the level of nefesh, and then create something that is good. By the way, this is why it's just genius. If you think about this, look, the Jewish calendar is constructed in a very powerful way, because whenever we have moments of ruach in the Jewish calendar, or that have a potential to be moments of elevation. What comes after that is strong action, not just action, but very strong action. So Yom Kippur is followed by Sukkot. What do we do on Sukkot? We build a sukkah. We shake the 4 species. We have to go out to the world and, pick those 4 species. We are launched into the strong action. Why? Because God is telling us, hey, translate this ruach into something that's very tangible. Otherwise, it's not worth anything. So you have moments like that. So anyway, that's ruach. The next level after that is neshama. And that's really the level that represents our soul most. Neshama is an interesting level because neshama is us disconnected from this world. Rabbi Steinsaltz would often say that people have to remember that they are in this world, but they're not of this world. Neshama is a strong reminder that we're not of this world. Our neshama is completely independent of this world. It shouldn't be affected by this world. No matter the transient events that we may be living in, it's not affected by this world. It's beyond that. It's the neshama comes in full display sometimes. Actually, we saw it a lot on October 7th and thereafter. See it in soldiers today. But that they're not affected by life and death. That they're not even affected by the noise and the terrible violence around them. For them, these soldiers who live on a neshama level, for them helping their fellow brothers and sisters and shouting Shema Yisrael while they do so is the only thing they think of. That's living in the neshama mode. Neshama is our best self activated all the time. Again, that's not affected by this world. Now, our task in many ways in this world is to live in that mode all the time. Are we successful? Probably not. Maybe 40% of the time, 50% of the time. But the goal is to live in that mode 100% of the time. The Baal Shem Tov, founder of the Hasidic movement, had a beautiful interpretation to a verse in the book of Psalms by King David. In Psalm 16, there is a verse that says, Shiviti Hashem lenegdi tamid. By the way, that verse is very often found in synagogues on the ark, engraved on the ark. Shiviti Hashem lenegdi tamid. What does it mean? If you open any translation, you'll probably see that it means that I have placed God in front of me all the time. Shiviti, I have placed. But Shiviti, the Baal Shem Tov says, does not mean I have placed. Shiviti comes from the Hebrew word shaveh, right? Which means equal. And the way he would interpret that, I think is really King David's real attention in writing this verse. And that is that God is equal to me all the time. Whether I am down or up, whether I'm in a good mood or bad, whether the biggest challenge has fallen upon me or I'm in the greatest state of happiness, doesn't matter. To me, my connection with God is exactly the same. To best explain that, I'm going to tell you a quick story. But again, this level of neshama. But Mendel Futerfas, I think, lived in that mode all the time. Mendel Futerfas, we mentioned many times, but he was a Hasidic Jew. He suffered tremendously in Russia. Spoke about him on Shabbat, if you recall. He himself was named after his father because his father died while his mother was pregnant with him. When he was called to the Torah, he was called Menachem Mendel, Ben Menachem Mendel, the son of Menachem Mendel. He had 4 children who died of diseases in his lifetime. And he was sent to the Gulag for many, many years just for spreading Judaism in communist Russia. One day in the Gulag in Siberia, he was having lunch with many of the inmates. And they all started to cry. One cried, said, I was a wealthy businessman before the Gulag and I have nothing. The other one cried and said, I was a famous politician, I have nothing. Everyone cried because of everything that was taken away from them. Mendel Futerfas was the only one smiling. So one of the inmates said to him, hey, Mendel, you must have been a loser before the Gulag. You remained a loser and therefore you're smiling. He said, no, actually, I was a successful businessman too. And it's true, he had big factories of textile and success. And that was taken away from me. But what I had before the Gulag is what I still have in the Gulag. And therefore I'm smiling. Before the Gulag, I was a servant of God. In the Gulag, I'm a servant of God. So really, I didn't lose anything. To use a computer language, maybe I lost my software, but I didn't lose my hardware. The hardware remained the same. And that's living in a neshama mode, that my real identity is I'm a servant of God. I'm connected with God. I'm one. That's all that counts. And therefore, God is equal to me all the time. So that's the neshama level. Then you have the ruach, after the chaya and the yechida, the two additional levels. These, according to Kabbalah, are levels of the soul that really don't come down here to this world with us. The neshama is here. We have to remember, we have to live in a neshama mode. So it's here. But there's a part of the soul that remains in heaven. And those are the two levels, chaya and yechida. Those serve as our GPS. They send us signals all the time. They tell us, do this, don't do this. Go right, go left. Maybe interact with this person and don't interact with this person. Sign this business deal or don't sign this business deal. They send us signals all the time. You may call it gut feeling. You may call it intuition. You may call it whatever you want. But those are signals of the soul up there, the chaya and yechida. Why? Because they see the whole picture. Remember, they're in heaven. They see everything. And therefore, they can tell you. They see the past, the present, the future. They see the full picture. And therefore, they can tell you, do this and don't do this, based on what's good for you. Now, the more a person is in tune with his neshama, of course, the more the signals will flow uninterruptedly. I think we mentioned this in the past, but that's why in Hebrew we say mazel tov. Remember? Mazel tov. Very often people think that when you say mazel tov, it means good luck. It doesn't mean good luck. It means good dripping. Mazel comes from the word to drip, nozel. Why? Because what we're really wishing one another is that should be good dripping between the chai and the chida and the rest of your soul here. So it flows, the signals are well received, and then you can make the right decisions. So good dripping, masal tov, good dripping. But those are the levels that remain up there. Chaya means life, and yechida means the unique one. Chaya means life because it's really what gives us life, real life, wholesome life. And it gives you the tools to make the decisions that will lead you to life. It relates to God's commandment in Deuteronomy. We just read this a few weeks ago in the Parsha. But God says, later on in the portion, it says, and you should, actually, sorry, it's not in Re'eh, it's coming up. It's in the portion coming up in Vayelech. God says, and you should choose life, right? I've placed before you death and life. Choose life. It's not just saying choose life, that you have to live and you have to fill your years with life. As Abe Lincoln said, at the end, it's not the years in your life that count, it's the life in your years. So it's not just that you have to live every day and fill every day with life. But what this really means is that you have to live a life that is divine, a life that was designed for you. Live your life, not someone else's life. How do you live a life like that? Through the chaya that sends signals. If you follow that signal, then you'll live a life that was designed for you. The more you follow the masses, the more that voice, so to speak, is squashed, and the less you can live that life that was designed for you. Anyway, then the highest level comes together with chaya a little bit, but it's still separate, is yechida, which means the unique one. And that's the part of us that is forever, no matter what happens, forever connected to God. We are all born inherently good. But sometimes life gets to us and we lose some of that goodness. But there's always a piece of God that is connected to us. And therefore, there's always this level of inherent goodness that exists within each and every one of us, regardless what happens. And that's why the Talmud says, Afal pi shechata Israel u. Even though a person may sin many times, he still has that divine connection. Now, sometimes it's very much hidden. Sometimes it's almost, completely concealed, but it's there. And that's the Yechida. It's unique. Now, this Yechida, if awakened, can transform a person's life completely. Rabbi Steinsaltz would very often tell the story of this kibbutznik that he knew, a man that lived in a kibbutz who was very much disconnected from his own Judaism. And then one day he sees him and he's a devout Jew and he's completely devoted to this neshama. And he asked, what happened? And he said, don't ask. I was in a class in my kibbutz and we read the Tanakh, as many Israelis do. We read the Bible. And then I fall into this verse from the book of Job that says, Lema'aseh yadecha ichsof. For the, how would you translate that? Lema'aseh yadecha ichsof. That the work of your hands I yearn for. It's God telling every one of us, I yearn for the work of your hands. And this guy had a revelation, probably from Yechida. He says, what if God yearns for the work of my hands? How can I disregard him like this? And he had this moment of tremendous awakening, probably the Yechida again, waking up, that changed his life. He says, I got to do something. I got to change directions. And it happens. I'm sure you know people who've had this incredible awakening. It wasn't just the Ruach that became action, but it was much more than that. Fundamental transformation. Yes, Hannah.
What's going on in Israel, I follow a lot, and so many of the soldiers have become founder souls and have become traditional.
Right.
The transformation of so many of the soldiers and Israelis, just what you talked
Right.
about.
Look, sometimes it's outside events that cause this awakening of the Yechida. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just from within. But it could be, sometimes not. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes just a person waking up in the morning and saying, you know what, can't live this life anymore. And everything changes from that point on. It's the Yechida calling him. Now, the Yechida only reveals itself once or twice or three times. If you're lucky, maybe 4 or 5 times during your lifetime. But when it awakens, it creates this tremendous transformation. Because again, it comes from so deep, it comes from that real raw point of connection with God that can never be contaminated by anything. That's the Yechida. Okay. Please, I welcome comments, questions. I know that's what learning is all about. We've often said that. The word for Hebrew, to learn, is the same word as to teach. You can't learn without teaching. You can't teach without learning. Please, Linda.
How we should even ask this?
No. The question you shouldn't ask.
That's the one you should ask.
That's
right?
exactly it's the one you should ask.
It's the mysticism, right? Where did it come from?
It's a great question. So it came from the beginning of times. There's a book out there called Sefer Yetzirah, which means the book of formation. But that book, as our tradition at least teaches, was given to Adam and Eve when they were created. That's really the foundation of the work of Kabbalah. It was elaborated later on in the Zohar by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, some 2,000 years ago. And then, more righteous people like Rabbi Yitzchak Ruria 400 years ago of the school of Kabbalah in Tzfat. But really the foundation of it all in Sefer Yetzirah, which really comes from the beginning of times. Now, in addition to that, the Kabbalists will tell you that Moses taught Kabbalah to the people. And in many ways, just like it's part of the oral law. So when God gave us the Torah, Mount Sinai, he didn't just give us the Torah, the written law. Makes sense to say that also because even on a very simplistic level, when God says to us, respect your parents, right? It says, Kabel et avicha v'et imecha in the 10 Commandments. Respect your father and your mother. How do you do that? You have to bring them a cup of water every day? Do you have to tie the shoelaces? What does it mean? The Torah doesn't tell you. So the Torah came with an oral law that described what it means. That oral law, by the way, was written eventually 2,400 years ago. And it means to respect your parents means that you can't call them by name. It means you can't sit in their seat. It means that you can raise your voice towards them. It means a lot of things. There's strict laws about what it means to respect your parents. So you have that oral law. In addition to that oral law, which describes, right, the commandments of the Torah and how they are carried out. You also have the Kabbalah, which came from God on Mount Sinai and was delivered by Moses. And Kabbalah would tell you, respect your parents doesn't just relate to parents. It also relates to the parents in each and every one of us. There's a masculine energy and a feminine energy. And when we respect parents, we have to respect those energies. So you can go on and on and on. I'm just using one commandment, but you can see how infinite it is because you have layers upon layers upon layers to each and every commandment.
So, as in the beginning, when it was first brought to whoever it was brought to Kabbalah, it's expanded over the years from people who are studying it and expanding the meaning of it.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
That's right. It's expanded. I would use the word revealed. It was revealed. It's almost like, it's almost like Kabbalah is that I don't know, maybe that syrup. It's a terrible example with great intensity. And then eventually the ingredients of that syrup were revealed. All sorts of juices were made from this syrup, and it became also more accessible. But it's a condensed version of God's ways of looking at things.
But I didn't know where the Kabbalah.
Right. No, I'm glad you asked it. That's why. See what? Do you see how good the question was? It's a question you should have asked, not that you shouldn't have asked. Okay, yeah. This is That's right. On Thursday nights, yeah.
Did you say it was
Maybe we should.
to Adam and Eve?
The book Sefer Yetzirah, which is the foundational book of Kabbalah, was given to Adam and Eve.
And then
It was given and was passed down from generation to generation to generation until our generation. It's still you can get it on Amazon. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yes. So where does the Tanya come into place? So the Hasidic movement is really a movement that is completely embedded by Kabbalah. Hasidic movement, it's not just the people wearing shtreimels and payas that you see dancing on the streets or whatever it is, or that live, but really it's a movement that came to bring Kabbalah into day-to-day actions so that it's not left in the books, but that it's turned into a way of life. That's what Hasidism does. The Tanya, which is one of the foremost books and the most important books of Hasidism, of Jewish philosophy, of Jewish psychology, dare I say, is really maybe one of the most dominant books, maybe one of the most significant books that take Kabbalah and turn it into a manual of psychology for people to know how to live. That's what the Tanya does. So out of that syrup, again, you have many offshoots, but Hasidism, what does, it takes Kabbalah and takes that syrup, so to say, and makes it very, very relevant. Tanya. By the way, every Sunday morning, you're all welcome. 7:30 a.m. We have a class on Zoom. You can even stay in your bed while you do that. Just shut off the videos, and we can learn the Tanya. Yes, Paulina.
Can you comment on Kabbalah,
Yeah.
lekabel, and so it means to receive.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. Very good. Yes. So Kabbalah means to receive. Yeah, it comes from the word lekabel, or Kabbalah even, which means receipt, not the receipt you receive at the store, but the receipt that we receive from God. And in many ways, because Kabbalah, just to go to the very essence of the idea, Kabbalah speaks of us being able to become channels of God in this world. To become channels of God in this world, we need to be able to receive His light, to receive His messages, a lot through the Chaya and Yechida that we spoke about. By receiving that, then we ourselves are becoming Kabbalists. That's what Kabbalah means.
I think I finally figured out why God wants us to live to be 120. Because I still don't understand all this stuff, right? Everything is connected. And, because things keep coming out. I didn't know that the Kabbalah was so old, So it's like, it's so fascinating. I guess
Yeah.
that's why you study it.
So Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, who we mentioned before, was one of the foremost Kabbalists of Tzfat 400 years ago. He would receive his wisdom from dreams or visions. And he then would transcribe them to his devout student, Rabbi Chaim Vital, who really wrote his writings. But Yitzchak Luria never wrote anything. He died at a very early age, not at the age of 37, some say 39. But one day he had a dream where he received all these teachings, and then he told Rabbi Chaim Vital to explain these dreams. It would take me 80 years. You see, it's true. I mean, look, if I look at this yard in front of me, the portrait of this yard, so I get the picture in a second by looking at it. To explain will take me a few minutes, a few seconds, a few minutes. But same with Kabbalah. So I think we need more than 120 years. At least I do. You probably need just like, a little bit.